I would say probably there's a creative force that created the universe, but after that, he's not really integrated into the world. The world just gets on, but it's by itself. I mean, he's not stopping what's going on in the Middle East at the moment, is he? So if he's in this world, doing things in this world, that's something he needs to do. And if he's not doing that, then he's not in this world, is he? There may be billions of universes that he's wound up, and he set them going, and he's sat there at the end waiting for what's going to pop out at the end of the experiment. How things are going to turn out.
Hey, just had a chat with a gentleman who believes in some sort of a, deistic view of God, God who's got the creation going and then basically just hasn't intervened since then. And he uses the evidence of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a reason for why we don't see God's act and his hands in this day, today, or ever in history. So it was an interesting conversation. I did give him reasons for why to think otherwise, what God did for all of us, how much he cares by giving us his son on the cross. And so hopefully he was going to be able to take that away, have a think about this. We had a chat quite a while after I finished filming, just to get to know him a little bit better, and him, me, and hopefully we can maybe continue this conversation at another time if I see him again. So I pray for him. I pray that he would see God as someone who cares for us personally, individually, and who wants to know us and restore us to him. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you again in the future, in the next video. God bless. Do you have any faith? Do you have any religion, any belief?
Let's see.
Finnish church, okay?
Yeah, there you go.
Are you a Finnish person yourself? Or?
No, I'm Welsh.
Welsh, okay. But
I've got some Finnish connections.
You have some Finnish connection. And do you attend this church that you?
No, I've just come from there now.
So would you call yourself a Christian?
So I got there mainly for the language.
For the language, okay. Okay. Well, Finnish is, I think, one of the most difficult languages to learn. Is that true?
That's true, yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. That's why my hold on it is fairly poor.
Right.
But anyway, I get something out of it when I go there.
Okay. So I appreciate you've shown me this connection that you have, but I guess to my question, do you have any faith? Do you have any belief? How would you answer that, though?
Well, I would say I haven't got any objections to other people having faith. I think probably Christianity is probably quite good because it's at the moment you've got the Jews killing the Christians, the Jews killing the Arabs killing the Jews, and Christianity would say, you shouldn't be doing that, basically. So it makes sense, doesn't it, from that point of view?
Right.
But Christianity would say, you should stop doing that. There's not a reason to do it.
Got it. Okay, but a lot of religions, even those people that are fighting, I mean, they would say in Islam and in Judaism, murdering, harming one another is not the right thing to do. Right? I don't think that's unique of Christianity. That's most of the
No, it's not unique, but they're able to more easily than Christianity point somewhere in the book and say, well, look, God said it's fine to go around killing people.
Right.
In these circumstances, where Christianity's probably got less of that, and it's probably something like Buddhism would have even less than that.
Right. Appreciate that. Yeah.
So I can see the sense of Christianity being put forward in the schools and stuff because it's on balance.
Balance. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're sort of sympathetic to Christianity because it has positive effects on the society.
That's right.
Encourages moral behavior and has sort of general positive effects in the culture.
Yeah.
Is that fair? But on a personal level, it doesn't sound like you are would you say that you're a man of faith? Like, would you say that you're praying, you recognize that there is an Almighty, you would recognize that there is some sort of a, let's say, personal sort of judgment that you would be
one day appearing before the Almighty to answer for your sins. Would you say any of that is true?
I would say probably there's a creative force that created the universe.
Okay.
So that's probably where I draw the line and say that's some creative force, some god or something started it all off.
Yes.
But after that, he's not really integrated into the world. The world just gets on, but it's by itself.
Right. And why would you think so? Like, is it because the way you see the world being, is that kind of what you would point to and say God does not have any interactions further with the world?
Yeah.
Okay.
He doesn't really interact.
Okay.
I mean, he's not stopping what's going on in the Middle East at the moment, is he? So
No, he's not. No. But that doesn't mean necessarily he's never interacted. Right? So how would you sort of the fact that in Christianity he sent his son, Jesus, who became flesh, right? He came from God, the Word became flesh, dwelled among us. I mean, we're going to be in Christmas in 6-7 weeks from now. We celebrate the incarnation, God becoming one of us, experiencing life as us, and then teaching us. Jesus taught us many things. He gathered disciples around him. He did miracles. He ultimately had a mission on earth. How would you say, was that all true, or was it not? Because that would be an example of God really caring about his creation, so much so actually that he sent his son.
Yeah. Well, I really see it in two parts. Originally, Jesus was a preacher. He went around the towns of Israel preaching and with his parables and all that sort of stuff, and all that's good and makes sense. But the second part was that after he died, they needed to try and make sense of him being on the cross and all the other stuff about him coming down from heaven and going into hell and all back that stuff. All that came along after, obviously after he'd died, and therefore that was all kind of added to the mix later on. So I'm happy with the stuff up until that he was preaching, but I'm not so happy with the stuff afterwards.
Okay. So
I see it as two parts.
Got it. So you see him as a preacher, as one of the maybe many prophets who walked. I mean, he was not the only one, right?
No,
there was many. Even Bible says there were many others. Some of them were even called Bar Jesus or something like that, who were coming before Jesus and then after Jesus. We have many, but I guess Bible would be very very clear in that the evidence that it's trying to put forth for his resurrection is actually it's like unequivocal in from a biblical perspective, right? If you read the four Gospels, if you read the letters that come afterwards, even if you read some extra biblical sources from just Josephus, the Jewish historian, the Pliny the Younger, the Roman, some of the Roman sort of governors that and officials that exchanged letters from the early church period, it was very clear that the early church believed what has happened, meaning the resurrection has happened very clearly, and Romans would be not Romans if they didn't sort of put someone on the cross and made sure that he was dead. They were experts in that, right? So how do you explain like the amount of kind of the evidence that we can say both from within the Bible as well as the outside of the Bible that actually speaks to a man who's resurrected, and that was kind of what kicked off the movement?
Well, all that stuff was written like sort of 50 or 60 years after, and it was written in Greek, and people's memories, they were trying to get the memories before the people died, so the people were quite old and their recollections were in the main the same, but in detail they were different. So the different Gospels have got different stories, really. The tax collector was converted to Christianity here, and his name was whatever, Levi, and then in another book his name's different. So obviously the recollections were different because of the period of time.
That's fair, right? There will be some details that could be potentially, just from different perspectives and different, as you say, recollections that might differ.
It's human memory, isn't it?
But an event such as resurrection, I mean, that is very, very clear. It's not like someone would say, oh, he may have resurrected, or no, he wasn't resurrected. It was very, all four Gospels.
Well, that was the belief. Like 50 years after, that was the belief. What happened, and obviously all the other things like the bread and fishes and all that stuff. All that was again being recollected 50 years after. That's what he did. That was the miracle that he did. And who can say, you know?
But you say 50 years after. I mean, it may have been written 50 years after,
Yeah.
but it was
But the
certainly...
recollections were 50 years after. That's when they was gathered together to be put into
But
the...
to put it today, to today's, let's say, analogy, right? So we have people who went through World War II who are still alive.
Yep.
That's over 50 years ago now. They would recollect battles,
Yep, they
D-Day
would.
landing. They would recollect a lot of the stuff. I mean, should we not believe them? If there's enough eyewitnesses who all speak of the same events that have happened, especially something that is as so kind of significant, right? I mean, we would have to say, look, they must have had that experience. That was a shared experience.
Yeah, it
we
was.
must take some seriousness to it. Would you? I mean, 50 years is still within a lifetime of human beings.
Yeah, well, obviously in general it would be the same, but in detail it would be slightly different. You know, we went up this. There were 20 Germans in the area, and
Yeah.
we managed to get through them. And somebody else there was 16 or it was 25. You know, there's going to be differences.
Sure, but this is a difference between was there a D-Day landing or was there not a D-Day landing? I mean,
True.
they can disagree how many enemies they've encountered, which specific landing spot they were on, maybe some of those details. But there was a D-Day landing, just like was there a resurrection? Yes, there was, or no, there wasn't. I mean, would you not see the same kind of analogy there?
Yeah, I can see what
Right.
you're saying,
Right.
but personally, I would dispute it after that period of time.
Right. Okay.
Obviously, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Yeah.
So that's my position anyway.
Sure, understood. How would you sort of, I mean, you spoke about Jesus being one of the teachers, one of the prophets. If we kind of step back and sort of speak about religion and Christianity specifically, what is its main message ultimately? How would you characterize the main message of Christianity?
Well, obviously the main message is to listen to the teachings, the parables and all that sort of stuff, and that Jesus died on the cross for your sins and went to heaven on that basis. So that's the fundamental.
So that's interesting.
Message.
You said so he died on the cross for the sins of the world, right?
Yeah.
So
That is the message.
that is the message, right? That is ultimately what he said himself, why he came, and that makes Christianity unique among other religions. I would say I don't know of any other religion where God purports to have died on behalf of His creation. That's to me something quite unique that puts Christianity apart. But do you that idea of dying for sins, or even the idea of sins, the fact that we are sinners? I mean, is that something you would agree with? Would you say we are sinners? Is that something that some people would say sin? I mean, what is it? Why would you call me a sinner? Everyone kind of does something wrong, but what does a sin mean? How would you understand the word sin and yeah?
Well, doing bad things. You know,
According
like
to-
if you go and kill somebody, you go to the church and say, "I did this bad thing. Can you absolve me of it?" And the church will say, "Okay."
Right.
You know, if you believe in Christ, then we'll absolve you of that sin. So you
Right.
forget you would. If you hadn't done that, you wouldn't have got into heaven. But now you'll be able to get into heaven because we've absolved you of that sin.
Okay. So it sounds like, I mean, again, don't want to put words in you, but it sounds like what you've described is if you confess, right? You confess the sin to someone else, let's say within maybe a priest or some clergyman, then that somehow releases you from that act. Okay. Which I wouldn't say it's a completely sort of incongruent, but I would say that it goes a little bit deeper than that. My understanding is that so the reason that Jesus went on the cross is because on the cross he was a symbol of the sin of the world, right?
Yeah.
So on the cross, my understanding of the reading of his words is that he became sin. He became sin, right? So that, like anything that I've done in the past that is considered sinful, even I would say it goes beyond just killing someone or stealing. Jesus said, if you look at a woman with lust, it is as though you committed adultery If you have anger towards your brother, it's as if though you have murdered him in your heart. I mean, all of this goes pretty deep in their heart, but says Jesus ultimately on the cross, he became the sin. He became the symbol of sin. And then God looked at him on the cross. He poured his wrath on him on the cross to deal with that sin as an atonement, right? So because the Bible is saying that the wages of sin is death, like the consequence of sin is death. Jesus being the symbol of sin, he dies to fulfill that consequence of the sin, right? But in exchange, so to your other point, that if we believe in that, if we put our trust in him, if we put ourselves like we trust Jesus with that, what he's done, he gives us absolution, he gives us the righteousness that is not our own, but that is his. And that was the big sort of Reformation moment, right, for Martin Luther. He was saying, it's not what we do that releases us from sin, it's what he has done. Our righteousness, our ticket, if you will, to heaven is not because of anything that we have done. It's not what we've deserved, quite the opposite. We don't deserve it at all, but it's what he gives us, his purity, because he never sinned. He gives us his purity. He takes our sin on himself. He gets judged for it. It's a great exchange, really, exchange of natures. He gives us his nature, we give him our nature. He suffers for it. For 3 days, he's in the grave, and then he's resurrected as the first of those who will be resurrected with him in the future. So does that sort of, that's my understanding of Christian message. Does that sort of...
It sounds about the same, doesn't it? What I said.
Sort of, right? Because I think the confession maybe is just one part of it, but there's a sense of not just confessing, it's putting your trust not in the priest, not in the church, not in anything else, but putting the trust in the one who's alive, who was dead on the cross for you. I think that's kind of the spiritual aspect of it that I think people often don't sort of recognize or don't even sort of include in their understanding. Yeah.
Okay, and you have to remember the historical period, because at that time Israel was occupied by the Jews, by the Romans.
Yes.
So the Romans were in control. So obviously that was for the Jews that was an issue because according to their Torah, God had given them Israel, and yet he now seemed to be giving it to the Romans. So is he giving it to the Romans? What are they supposed to do? Give in to the Romans, or do they rise against the Romans, or what do they do? So they were looking for a prophet to kind of tell them what to do, maybe lead them in a big war against the Romans or whatever. And then Jesus came along and he said, you should turn the other cheek and all that sort of stuff, and you should render unto Caesar what Caesar's and unto God what is God's. So in that historical period, they were in psychological torment because they didn't know how things were going to, or what they should do. Eventually they did rise up against the Romans, and of course they all got killed as a result. And the Jews got scattered to the four winds and ended up everywhere. So they ignored Christ's message, basically. So that's another ingredient in the mix as to what was going on.
No, that's absolutely true. It's not everyone ignored it, otherwise we wouldn't be
Well,
here. It's the start. I guess it goes. I would say it goes even further back, right? So Jesus was the Messiah who was awaited from Jews for millennia, right? So we have prophecies of someone that they were waiting for even from the time of Moses and Abraham, right? They were the prophets of the Old Testament. They were pointing to and speaking God's word of there will be someone who will come, who will bear our sins. The Isaiah, the prophet. I mean, this is often what is read in the church services on Christmas, right? He will bore our transgressions. He will be pierced for our transgressions, right? All the weight of the world, the sins will be upon his shoulder. All of those were fulfilled in Jesus, right? So I think the circumstances of Roman occupation were just, I would say, providential, circumstantial. They would have happened. They would have, Jesus would have come. I think he, yes, of course, he came in that time period, but the prophecy was going to be fulfilled by God's doing one way or another. So what I'm trying to say, Jesus wasn't the product of Roman period. It's that Roman period was instituted so that Jesus would come, and he would be very clear that he's not a usurper, he's not a political activist, he's not there to do the worldly kingdoms. His kingdom was not of this world. His kingdom was a spiritual kingdom. Not even the kingdom of Jews as in a political way. We said clearly, he was saying, with his disciples said, his disciples said, should we rain down fire on these villages that do not believe you? And Jesus rebuked them, said, what are you talking about? I'm not here either for Romans nor for you guys, politically speaking. I'm here to turn around a spiritual kingdom. The kind of kingdom that Daniel describes in his book of the Daniel, right, where it starts as a small seed and then expands to fill the whole world, which is, I think, exactly what happened, after Jesus died and Christianity was born as a movement. It spread throughout the world and it grew in a movement that spans nations, spans countries, spans politics, spans races, backgrounds. It is one of the, if you look at religions, it is the most, I would say, diverse, most accepted globally. Because you would say Islam is kind of more Middle East focused, Buddhism, Far East, India, China, all that kind of stuff. But Christianity really can be found everywhere, all over the world. It has no borders, it has no race. In fact, the race and the culture and politics are done away with in Jesus, because it's a spiritual kingdom, right? I mean, that's another thing that is very unique, a unique proposition from Christianity.
Yeah, I think I see Christianity as a reaction to the Romans, though. I do see it.
You do see it as a reaction to Romans.
Yeah, as a kind of answer to the issues that the Jews had at the time, as to because they were in mental turmoil because of the Romans, and it was an answer to the Jews as to one solution, which a way they could have gone, which they didn't go.
But it doesn't. How would you see it? Maybe explain to me a little bit more, right? Because again, Jesus rebuked them when they were thinking that he was coming to change the Roman rule. Early church, the evidence is that they again did not look to change the Roman rule. They were very happy. Even the letters that we have from the New Testament of Peter and Paul saying, you need to obey the authorities. You need to submit to the authorities, to the governors. They were instituted by God. That Roman governor, that Caesar, that thing, that's there because God put them there. We're not here to change that political rule. You're to submit to them, obey them, pay them the taxes, honor them even. But what you are to do is that you're to spread the message of the discipleship to Jesus, the spiritual kingdom, right? So none of the evidence, either from the Gospels nor from the early church period, shows that they had any problem with the Roman rule, or any rule for that matter. Yeah, politically speaking.
You have to remember that the Gospels were written in Greek, so you have to remember the Greeks. The Greeks had a big influence in the whole of Christianity. So you need to draw them into the equation as well.
In which way? So the Greek was a language, obviously, of a culture. Things were written in Greek, just like today. If you want to publish something, you would write it most likely in English because you would want to have wide circulation. A lot of people just publish in English for that reason. That's the same reason why things were written in Greek, so that they would be carried through cultures, through barriers, because things were written in that period of time mostly in Greek to get the wide circulation. So, but the Greeks, as a people, obviously were culturally very influential.
Yes.
We know Corinth was a big seat of kind of just cultural and economic sort of movement and period, and Athens as well. But how would you say that Greeks were? In fact, I would say Greeks were quite spiritually in a decline at that stage because of the influence of the, let's call, pagans and other cultures who were coming in. They were undermining some of their long-held beliefs about the pantheon, right? They started to expand, they started to sort of dilute. There were some other ideas that were coming in. Christianity was ultimately a very novel idea. We know that Paul argues with the Greeks and logically argues with them and challenges them on their own beliefs. That's also described in the Bible. But how would you say that it was the other way around? Greeks were influencing.
Well, if things are written in English today, then you're going to naturally incorporate some English ideas into the the whole thing. So I would say that whereas Greek ideas were incorporated into Christianity as a result of it being written in Greek and having Greeks heavily involved in Christianity. So
okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think there's some, I would say, idioms and some maybe ideas that I think were useful to the Christians to convey that would have resonated. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
But
so for instance, the Jews believe in a single God, one God. Yeah. So the idea of there being two gods, Jesus and God, would make no sense to them. So that idea has come from outside and probably from the Greeks. So you've ended up with in a way like two gods, or the Trinity, three. Yeah. So that from a Jewish point of view, that doesn't make sense, because the key ingredient of Judaism is there's one God. That's like their key point. And in fact, in Islam, Muhammad doesn't say that he's a god or anything. He says no, just one God, and that's it.
Yeah.
So all the religions, it's only Christianity that has ended up with, in a sense, two gods or three gods.
But it hasn't, right? And that's the whole point, right? So Christianity was very, very clear that thinking about...
But do you understand what I'm saying? Where I'm coming from?
Maybe, sort of. I'm not sure that I do, right? But I can see that Christianity could be accused of having multiple gods, but Christianity is extremely clear in its core doctrine that there is only one God. In fact, to speak of three gods, it would be a blasphemy. Those who have tried to do that throughout Christian history have been anathematized, meaning they were excluded from the church, because that is not the belief of Christians, right? It is. There's a Son of God, Jesus, Holy Spirit of God, God the Father, but three in one, right? I can say that I can see that the idea of a Trinity may have been a difficult one to sort of absorb. Whether that has any influence from Greek, I cannot speak to that. I cannot speak to any. I don't know personally of any analogies or parallels where in the Greek culture there would be the Trinity idea. I'm not aware of any. I've done some studying, but I'm not aware of any. But at the same time, it is very clear that Christianity rejects utterly the idea of three gods.
Okay.
Right.
But say the Jews at that time, one of their key ideas was there's one God.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have a truck with anything else. But at that time, in that period, the idea, well, to us, the idea of a son of God is a bit strange. But in those times, there were sons of gods, because, for instance, Octavian was the son of Julius Caesar, and he was the son of a god, according to the Romans, because they said Julius Caesar is now a god, therefore Octavian, his stepson, was the son of a god.
Yeah.
So the idea of a son of a god was quite common at those times,
Sure.
whereas it's not common now, and it wasn't common before. But the idea of there being a son of God was around in the Greco-Roman world.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so it's coming to Christianity. Christ is the Son of God. You can see, well, that's just at the time, at the precise time, that was perfectly acceptable that you could have sons of gods, and therefore that's how one way the idea could have come into Christianity.
Maybe that's the language, but I think it was very clear that what Jesus meant by being a son of God was specifically taken by the Jewish religious authorities as a blasphemy, because he made himself equal to God.
That's
him,
right. Yes.
Him saying that was making that to them mentally sort of meant, okay, so are you making yourself equal with God? And that's what they put him on the cross, is because when he was saying that, they understood that, where you're saying you're God then, or equivalent.
So that's what I'm saying. As far as from a Jewish point of view, it's a blasphemy. It doesn't make sense.
Sure.
But from a Roman point of view or the Christian point of view, it makes sense.
Okay. I mean, maybe just the sort of these sort of maybe the way it's articulated is maybe there's some ideas there that are sort of resonating. But still I would say that the idea of unity, spiritual, divine unity of the three beings, three persons of God. It's not named as such in the Bible. We don't use the word Trinity there, but Jesus' words, how he described himself, how he was seen by the early church, by the apostles. I think it's very, very clear in what it's trying to sort of say. We can, again, interpretation, we can argue about that in the influences, but I think it's very clear there's something unique about that, right? But it's still one God, one Godhead, as they say. Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing is the Day of Judgment. At that period of time, they seemed to be very keen or thinking there was going to be the world was going to end soon. So again, that was less of a Jewish idea, more of the ideas at that time. The prophets of the time were saying things about that, and that's got into Christianity, and it's also got into Islam. So they're very focused on the judgment at the end of time. And so is Christianity, whereas Judaism is less so, as far as I'm aware.
Well, from what I understand, Jewish prophets, right, were very clear about the judgment as well. At the end of the days, there's they call the Day of the Lord, is the phrase that is often used in the Old Testament to indicate that day of judgment.
And which prophets were talking about that?
I would say Ezekiel.
Right.
So because Ezekiel's words are used in the Revelation,
Right.
there's a lot of quoting of Revelation, has a lot of parallels with Ezekiel, because
Right.
what Ezekiel was speaking is seen. A lot of the visions are having a lot of the parallels in John's Revelation book, right? So I would say there's a lot of parallels there as well. I think Malachi as well has speaking similarly of the day of the Lord and the judgment. Yeah. But how would you would you say there is going to be an end of the world? Would you say there is going to be a judgment?
I mean, the way things are going at the moment, there's going to be an end of the world, isn't there? Because what's happening in Israel is not really heading in a good direction.
But that's kind of like localized, right? That is Middle Eastern trouble, if you will. Do you see that as? Because I said when I say the end of the world, I'm meaning really the end of this creation, not like an end of a political period or a bit of a turmoil, just like in World War II. People said, "Oh, it's the end of the world because the whole world is at war." That seemed like the end of the world in some respect, but here we are, 50 years, 60, 70 years later, and we're still here.
Yeah.
I think Bible speaks of the end of all things. Right? The heaven and earth will pass away,
Right.
and there will be a judgment. Right, and then the new, there'll be remaking of the heavens and the earth to restore all things to God, right? Because the biblical story goes from the creation, Eden, which things were perfect then, they were good, but then the fall happens, sin, and everything gets affected by that sin. So we're living in a world now that is affected by sin.
Yeah.
It is an imperfect world. It is a world of suffering and death precisely because of that sin. But God is looking to restore it, to remake it ultimately into the ideal that was in the beginning, but even better than in the beginning, right? So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the end of this world, the end of the suffering, the end of death, the end of the creation as we know it, and a remaking it into something else. Do you believe there is going to be something like that?
Well, if you talk about global warming, that seems to be heading in that direction.
Okay.
It will destroy the world eventually, because humans aren't going to stop from warming the world. It's just going to keep warming until everybody's dead. Basically, that's the way nature works.
Right.
So that will bring an end to the world. And what's happening in Israel at the moment, they don't, there's no solution at the moment, as far as the Arabs can see, apart from destroying Israel completely. So that's, for them, that will be the end of the world. So, things aren't looking good.
Right.
Christianity would probably say you need a two-state solution, mate. You need to have two states, your state and the Palestinian state, and then work together. but the Jews now, they're looking to, their only solution is to destroy destroy the West Bank and Gaza, and the only solution they've got is to destroy Israel. So you've got they really need a dose of Christianity or something in the middle.
I would say, but even the two-state solution or whatever. I mean, you say Christians would say that. I don't know, to be honest, what Christians would say. But I think Christians would say sin continues to have its influence on the world. We are the originators of sin. Whatever you call yourself, Palestinian, Jew, Christian, we are sinners. We make this world a worse place, usually because of the sin that is within our hearts. So a true Christian would say everyone needs to have a renewal of their heart. They need to be transformed in their heart and their mind so that they can love their enemy. Otherwise, any political solutions, any worldly solutions are perhaps going to be temporary at best before the sin kind of takes over again. But I guess maybe just, do you think there is life after death, right? Do you think there is some sort of a continued existence after we die?
Not as an individual, no, I don't think so.
Okay. So we stop existing?
I think we stop existing, yeah.
Okay. Do you believe that because you found no evidence for otherwise? Because again, I would just say scriptures really speak of the afterlife quite openly. Of the heaven and the hell destination after the judgment, but you don't believe that is true?
Not really, no. I think we just we cease to exist. Well, we cease to exist as individuals, I think.
But in some other format, you think we might be existing?
Well, we're matter, aren't we? So the matter doesn't disappear. The matter carries on. Okay. This matter will be here in a billion years' time.
Yeah.
So the matter is still here, but whether
So maybe this brings me sort of to another question. That is, do you believe that you are just a matter? We are just matter. That's all we are. So you believe matter gives rise to consciousness, to ideas, to thinking?
Yeah, but I probably think that matter shouldn't exist. Because science would say you can't create matter and you can't destroy matter. So if you can't create it, what's it doing here? See, so that's where I say the God part of it comes in, because you've got something that can't exist which does exist. Okay, so matter itself. I mean, a stone shouldn't exist according to science, because you can't create it. You can't destroy it and you can't create it. So in a sense, a stone has got psychic energy which it shouldn't have, and therefore
I would say more than that. I would say yes, matter that shouldn't exist, consciousness should not exist either. Certainly not as a result of matter. So,
well, if matter has got spirit, then consciousness will come from it. So I'm saying that the matter is holy in a way. So we'll disappear into our individual parts, our individual matter, but that matter still has some sort of soul to it. So it can assemble itself into future entities.
Okay, well, maybe we're getting a bit too sort of esoteric of what that sort of soul of a matter would be. But I guess what I'm saying here is that we are special as human beings. We are special, right? So we are unique in the ability that we have to be a spiritual being, right? To self-reflect, to consider things, to emote, to have consciousness, to think of ourselves with respect to the world, right? So I would say that itself is one respect impossible.
Yeah.
To arise out of just spontaneously, right? So
yeah, but that's only if you disdain matter. Because
Sorry?
if you disdain matter, if
I
you,
don't. Why would that be only possible if you disdain matter? Sorry, I didn't understand that.
well, you're saying it can't just come out of soil and stone and stuff like that. It's just not possible. But what I'm saying is it's that the stone and soil itself shouldn't exist in the first place. So that means it's got spirit. If it exists, it's got some kind of spirit, and therefore, if matter has got spirit, then we can come out of that out of matter, because matter has got some kind of spirit attached to it, which because it shouldn't exist.
Right. Okay. Well,
See?
I guess
So matter shouldn't exist. It does exist, therefore it's been created in some way by some system or being or whatever, and therefore attached to matter is spirit, and therefore we are matter that has become aware of itself.
Yes, but I would say we're more than a matter that was become, because I would, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sort of trying to put your understanding in my own sort of thoughts. But like, it's not that we are a collection of atoms, each of which has a spirit that are somehow vibrating together at a frequency that makes you. No, I would completely reject that, because that sort of implies some sort of a additive spirituality, which I don't see any sort of evidence of, right? So I think we as human beings, we're unique personality, unique character, that is not replicable, at all, right? So even if you could constitute yourself somehow again, your twin, almost exactly the same atoms and same sort of DNA and everything like that, it would be a different person, a different personality, different character, different spirit, right? Different idea, right? So that to me is not a product of matter. That is comes from somewhere else, I would say. Yeah.
But for instance, that tree senses. It's got a spirit. It senses things. It reacts to things.
How do we know that?
Well, we can see it grows.
But that's one thing to see something grow, but we don't know about the spiritual aspect of a tree. Can we resonate with a tree?
Well, I don't know if we can, but the tree itself,
right.
That tree will be sensing us at the moment. It will have some kind of awareness of us.
And how do we know that, though?
Well, we don't, I suppose. But
right,
I'm saying that's what I think.
Right. Okay.
So we've got a great deal of awareness of what's going on around us.
Yeah.
Things like trees have also got awareness, maybe not as much, and a stone has probably got no awareness whatsoever. But we're all potentially capable of these things, and probably going forward it will be even more so.
Right. So you don't. So where I was going with that, you don't think that. So in the Genesis creation, going back to biblical account, we are a special case, right? So God created human beings on the sixth day as an image. We're the image of God, which is a very special thing. None of the creation here was said to be the image of God. That means that we are in some way very, very special creation, right? So would you say that we are special in that sense? Are we special versus the creation?
Well, I believe in the Big Bang theory and all that stuff. So the universe was created 30.5 billion years ago, and has been evolving ever since. So if God is there at all, he was there right at the beginning. He set the whole thing off going and just let it get on with itself.
Right.
And that's how I see things. All the other stuff about Noah and the Ark and all that stuff, that was all added,
right? But
interpreted later.
We have a story that God says He has created us. He has acted in this world. He did not just wind the clock and step away. The Bible tells us clearly that He's an active participant in creation. If we allow ourselves to seek Him and understand Him, that He has acted in this creation repeatedly, in this creation as in like creation of the life, and continues to act in the story of humanity, as we believe He does through evidence of the Bible and the people who have had interactions with God. I think we need to come face to face with Him. And why would we stop And why would we reject him utterly, continuously, when he is making every single attempt to have a relationship with us? Why are we so resistant to have a relationship with him? Him who is doing everything he can to have a relationship with us. Why are we so resistant?
Well, when's he going to do something about the Israeli-Palestinian war then? Because obviously
Yeah.
he needs to
What-
step into that.
what
That's
would
a
you
fairly
like him
key
to do?
thing.
What would you like him to do?
Well, I'm
then?
not God. I'm not.
Right.
I can't answer that. But he needs to
But
stop
what do you
it
think?
somehow,
No,
doesn't
but-
he?
but
And he's not
you're
going to
saying-
stop it.
but-
So he's
but-
not interfering. He's
Yeah.
not coming
would
into
you-
this world to do anything.
What do you think he would need to do? Well, so you're putting God now in the judge. You're putting him in the dock.
Yeah.
You're the judge. God is in the dock.
Yeah.
What is he needs to do in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict?
Well, he needs to stop it, doesn't he?
Stop
if,
it,
if he's
okay.
capable of stopping it.
Right.
But if he's just wound the whole thing up, and he just wound the clock up and it's running away, it's going to do whatever it's going to do. You know, he's set the whole thing going, and
Right.
if the Israelis kill all the Palestinians or the Palestinians kill all the Israelis, well, that's just the wind. That's the wind up.
And
He
who
said it
sh-
winding up.
Okay,
and
let's say he stops that. What is the next thing on the agenda from you to him? What else does he need to stop?
what do you mean?
So he stopped. Let's say he is able to stop the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
Well, if
in
he's-
some way.
if
What else
he's-
should he do?
If he's in this world,
Yeah.
doing things in this world,
Yeah.
that's something he needs to do. And if he's not doing that, then he's not in this world, is he?
Right. So, but what I'm saying is that what else after the Israeli-Palestinian conflict should he be doing in this world?
Well, that's up to God.
So, wait a second. You've just told him about one conflict that he needs to resolve. What about Ukrainian and Russian conflict? Is that okay or not okay?
Wow, that's come to a halt at the moment, doesn't it?
Not really. Just because we don't see it in the news doesn't mean it's come to a halt. They're
Yeah,
still
well,
killing one
it's-
another.
Yeah, it's come to a balance. It's stopped. They've stopped making progress. Russians have stopped making progress, and the Ukrainians have
But
stopped.
they're still
making
killing
progress.
one another. They're still people
Yeah,
are dying
true.
by hundreds, if not thousands, every day.
Mhm.
Civilians included, right?
Mhm.
It's just the way the news cycle works.
Yeah.
because we don't get to hear it. What about the earthquake in Nepal that happened a couple of days ago, where
Oh.
hundreds of people died? Should
that
he be doing
Nepal?
something about that? Yeah, in Nepal. It was in Nepal. Yeah. What about that? Should he do something about that?
Well, he should set a list up with his priorities.
Right. And solve it all, right? So make sure that no one ever.
Well, solve the main ones anyway.
Okay, so he should just to put the kind of list together, right? He should make sure that no suffering happens anymore. Yeah. No accidents, no suffering, no killing,
Well,
no stealing.
maybe you should just get his priorities right.
What are the
Just
priorities?
to,
That's what I'm trying
well,
to get
obviously,
to.
probably the Israel one is probably the main one, and then the Ukrainian one's the next.
Right.
And he can work his way down the list.
Right. According to whose agenda?
Well, his agenda.
No, you. But
He created everything apparently, so
but you know, but you're saying that this is the top priority. I'm saying who is putting that on the top priority? What about people that are starving? I don't know, somewhere in the world. Why is that not on the agenda? Darfur, South Sudan. Why is that not on the top of the agenda?
Well-
So who puts that on the top of the agenda? Who puts the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on the top of the agenda? Just because it's in the news cycles, why is that at the top of the agenda?
well, because that's where the most likely the most people are going to die.
Not necessarily. That's just the 10,000. 10,000 people can die overnight in a single earthquake, as they have done in Syria a couple of, last year, right? When certain happens, right? So does the priority shift by the number of people that die? What drives the prioritization?
Well, it's a judgment call, isn't it?
Whose judgment call is it?
God's judgment call.
No, but you're putting it on the top of the list, right? So
No, I'm suggesting it should be on the top of the
Okay,
list.
you're
But obviously,
okay.
it's up to God to work out the priorities.
right.
But what I'm saying really is, if those things aren't being done, then that means there's no personal God. There's he wound it up, he set it going, and however it turns out, well, there
Yeah.
may be billions of universes that he wound up, and he set them going, and he sat there at the end waiting for what's going to pop out at the
Yeah.
end of the experiment. What how things are going to turn out.
but I would
And
say
in this world, there's
well, yeah.
billions of millions of Jews will end up being killed, but
Yeah.
that's just the experiment running its way.
Yeah, but I would say you completely then missed the point of God in that case. I'm sorry to say, but like it's the reason I was going with those questions, right? Is that when you take that thinking through to its logical conclusion, then the ultimate question is what you should be asking, I should be asking, is what should God do about your own situation, about my situation, right? Because the same reason or the same drive that is causing the Israeli to kill the Palestinian, or the Palestinian to launch a rocket into the Israeli land, at the bottom of it is sin. At the bottom of it is our own need to make ourselves number one in our own lives. That is at the root of everything, right? So yes, if given an opportunity, I can guarantee you that if I was a Palestinian living in the Gaza Strip under all the oppression or whatever it is, and I had sufficient, let's say, triggers, my family was killed and I was in dire straits, I have no hope, nothing to live, I don't see that I would do anything differently than what those people are doing there. Just because I'm a sinful being, I know I get angry, I know I act irrationally, with all the education that I have, it doesn't help me to put to death my own emotions, and that's the sin within me, wants to make me number one in my own life, wants to act according to my own desires, not according to anyone else's desires. I would allow myself to be the product of my own anger, of my own emotion. And so how should God deal with me? Well, he should deal with me ever so severely, just like he should deal with that Palestinian-Israeli conflict, right? That's not a thing on its own. Palestinian-Israeli conflict. These are a set of individuals who are making decisions that are leading to conflicts like those. But if you get it to the bottom level, that's you and me. That's us acting according to our own drives, according to our own sinful behavior. So if I'm honest with myself, I should ask myself, God, what would you do with me? How would you deal with me personally? I don't deserve any better than those guys in the Israel-Palestinian conflict. I should be put to some sort of at peace or something like that, right? So that I'm not allowed to roam around this world causing trouble myself, right? But that's exactly what he did do. This is what he did do on the cross. On the cross, Jesus Christ, right? This is what I'm saying. He has done something already. He's done something about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. He has done something about it. He has offered peace to the world if they would allow themselves to put their trust in him, in God, allow themselves to be transformed in their own nature, be given a new heart, a new mind. They would not be in this murderous, in this sinful case that they are currently on. So what I'm saying, God has done something. It's just whether we want to take what he's done and what he's given or not.
Okay, well, let's end it there then.
Okay. Would you?
Thank you.
Did I put you off of something with that comment, or did I just take too much of your time, or?
Well, yeah, time's gone now, and anyway, that was a good point to finish.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
And I appreciate your time. Really, really.